What's up, everybody? So we're back on the shop with another vlog, and what we're going to do today, take this knife, these handle scales, and make them one thing. So that's the goal for today. We're going to go ahead, get the handle scales put on the knife. We're going to focus primarily just on that process, the part leading up to mounting the handle scales, then shaping the handle scales. That's going to be this video. The next video is going to be putting an edge on the knife and the finish work on the knife so that we can kind of break that down. We're going to go ahead, jump into the handle scale part today. Let's jump into it. Let's get it done. See how it goes. Alright, now y'all are going to have to bear with me on this because there is a lot of information to give when it comes to putting handle scales on a knife. I know this video is a little bit longer, but I wanted to show y'all each step and make sure y'all really understood what I was doing and why I was doing it. Now we're going to go ahead and take the knife and place it on the wood and start getting an idea of where we want to put the knife. Once we get comfortable with where it's at on the handle scales, we go ahead and we draw the outline of the knife on there, and then give it a little double check to make sure that we like where it's positioned. And if you do, great. We go to the next step, which is trying to figure out what angle you're going to put on the front of the handle scales where they meet the ricasso. I like to mimic the plunge line just a little bit, so that's what I did on this one. Now the next step is going ahead and clamping the knife to the handle scales. And you want to make sure you have your front two holes exposed so that we can actually go to the drill press and drill through this. We're just using 3/16 drill bits for the 3 pinholes. There will end up being a 1/4 inch lanyard hole as well. I'm just using one of my drill bits to fill in the hole for right now until I cut the pins for it. That's the 1/4 inch hole right there. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut off all the excess, and I like to cut as close to that line as possible. Heck, even sometimes I will cut all the way on the line because I want to have the least amount of material left whenever it comes to glue up time. So I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time grinding on the handle scales whenever it comes to getting it close to the spine of the knife and the tang itself. So I'll take my time and I'll cut all of this little excess off, get it pretty smooth so that we can go to the next step. Now it's time to do a really important part, and that is get the front of the handle scales finished. We're going to go with this 400 grit belt that I have right here, and we are going to shape the front of the handle scales. We're going to round it off just a little bit and make sure that we have the exact angles that we want. Now, there has been questions about what angle you do on this, different types of ways that people make them and do them. I go by eye and what looks right to me. I don't do a specific angle or anything like that. I like to do a lot of this by eye. And it tends to turn out pretty good. So once we get that part done on the belt grinder, we go ahead and we hit it with 500 grit. There's going to be times whenever I start with 150 grit on this, but that 400 grit did a really good job already when shaping the handle scales to actually make it pretty smooth. So all I needed to do was 500 grit and 1000 grit. There's 1000 right there. And this will be completely finished so that once I put them on the knife, it will actually be done, and all I have to do is buff it from that point forward. The last thing you want to do is sand on these once they're on the knife. Now it comes time to do the glue up. So we're going to take our 5-minute epoxy. So you want to mix this stuff really well, just take your time and do that. We're going to go ahead and slow down right here because I want to show y'all really how much epoxy I put on here. So on the first handle scale, I really just put enough to coat it. I don't try and put a whole bunch on there. I'm not trying to, have a whole bunch of squeeze out. I just want just enough because we're going to put a little bit of epoxy on here, and then we're going to put more epoxy on the actual tang itself just to fill in the holes and lines for the file. And then we're going to put more on the other side of the tang, again to fill the holes and the areas for the file. And then we put a light coat on the other handle scale. We're trying to have the least amount of squeeze out as possible, and that's what I do with all my knives. Now when it comes time to clamp these up, we want to make sure that we're just clamping it enough to close any gaps, but that's it. We don't want to squeeze out every single piece of epoxy, because if we do that, you won't have anything left in there to keep the bond. And then we're just using a Q-tip and acetone to clean up the front end where the handles meet the ricasso. Now what I'm doing here, I wanted to thin out the handle scales because I felt like they were too wide. So instead of taking and doing all of this on the belt grinder, I decided to mark a line, get it as even as possible, and then take it over to the porta bandsaw and just cut it straight off. I was going to cut the pins anyways, so this is just a little bit of an extra step, but not much extra work. What we're going to do here is just go ahead, flatten the scales out, and make sure they're even on both sides. The reason why I do this is so that whenever I start shaping my handle scales, I am even on both sides, and it just makes it to where you have a good end result, as opposed to starting with two lopsided scales or two uneven scales whenever you get into the fine work. Once I feel comfortable with how thick they are and how even they are, then we go to the next step. And that is going ahead and getting everything sanded all the way around the tang itself. And we're just using the drum sander. This is one of my larger drums with a 80 grit sanding drum. And we'll take it and go over a lot of the main larger areas. You see the lines from the grinder right there. We're going to go ahead and smooth all of that out. And this oscillating spindle sander slash drum sander, it puts in work, so it'll take all those little lines completely out of this. Again, if you have a 2x72, this is basically equivalent to a small wheel attachment. That's how smooth that this can get. And that was just with an 80 grit drum. Now it's time to go ahead and start shaping our handle scales. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a 45-degree angle all the way around the handle scales. And this is just going to help me end up rounding it and shaping it later. But whenever you do the 45-degree on this, you can actually get a good idea of where everything's at and how even you're doing everything before you start rounding it. And this is a common angle that most people do on their handle scales. And I really like doing a lot of this on the belt grinder. I feel comfortable with stock removal and with doing things like this, but there's a lot of people that feel more comfortable doing it with files and rasps, and I get that. It takes off less material and a little bit slower. Now we're going to go ahead and hand sand. We're going to start off with 500 grit and we're going to go all the way to 1000. So I'll do 500 grit on the under part of the handle scale, and then I'll flip it over and do 500 grit on the top part of the handle scales, and then I'll flip it back over and do 1000, and then flip it back over and do 1000 again whenever I'm doing this. So as I'm finishing this right here, this is with the 1000 grit sandpaper. And we'll just make sure that everything feels good. It feels good in the hand. This is the last time I'll check before I go to the next step. And just in case y'all are wondering how much sandpaper I use whenever I'm sanding handle scales, this is it. I use a lot of sandpaper, and this step takes so long. I'll spend an hour and a half hand sanding just to get the finish that I want. So much sandpaper. Now it's time to go ahead and use some green compound and give this a buff. So that's what it looks like prior to the buff. Still pretty flat and dull. And once we get on here, it will buff up very well. I love this particular polishing wheel, and then that green compound, it does a really good job on handle scales. As you can see right there, that shine that's on it now. Alright, well, this is going to wrap up today's daily vlog. Check that out. So we have zebra wood, black palm. You can actually see a little bit of that grain structure right there. It's just dots. I absolutely love that. I think it complements the knife very well. We got that red vulcanized paper on the liners there, and the divider between the pieces of wood. I do like the fact that you can still see the file in the handle. And I did something a little bit different back here. I actually tapered in just where the actual lanyard hole is itself. So it's just right here and right here, so that whenever you have a lanyard on here, it's not wider than the handle. And a lot of the times that's what happens, is the lanyard comes out and then comes back. And with this, it's pulled in so that it's just comfortable no matter how you're holding it. And I did make the handle a little bit longer so that lanyard hole does come past your hand. But love the way this is turning out. Love the finish on the knife. Now, this is not an actual mirror finish. This is still a satin finish. You can see the sand lines right there. But, I mean, you see my reflection of my hand right there. It's just, it looks crazy. Got that maker's mark. You already saw me put that on there. But guys, tell me what y'all think about that handle. I think it looks beautiful. I love this grain. And what we're going to do next, in next video, we're going to go ahead, we're going to put an edge on this. The reason why I'm not doing it in this video is because I wanted to dedicate this one just to doing the handle and breaking that down. And what I'm going to do with the sharpening video, I'm going to talk about my sharpening system, why I chose it, what I do with it, and really get into that. So that's going to be its own video. That'll be tomorrow's video. But for right now, thank y'all for coming by and checking that out. And if you haven't yet, give this video a thumbs up. Share this video or a video I've done in the past that might be your favorite. And guys, if you haven't yet, right there, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you get notified when I put the edge on this, plus some of the other awesome stuff that we have working. Thank y'all for coming by. Thank y'all for checking this out. Y'all have an amazing day. I'll catch y'all next time.